Mrs. AKOBIA, thank you very much for your willingness to give us this interview. I would start with the first question. There is talk, and there is obvious talk, about the polarization of the Georgian society. So can you maybe elaborate a bit more? What does it mean? When somebody says polarization in Georgia, what is the current situation?
In Georgia, the political specter is very polarized. There is the ruling majority government, Georgian Dream, and there are main opposition party in the parliament, which is UNM, and there are opposition parties outside of the parliament. However, there's a almost continuous process of boycott between them, and that is very disrupting for the normal democratic processes in the country. That is, they do not communicate. There are media platforms that are perceived either pro-government or pro-opposition. The government doesn't respond to the questions that opposition electorate has, legitimate questions, and the governmental media doesn't invite opposition figureheads. There basically this existing extreme polarization between political parties is hurting the democratic processes in the country, and especially the accountability, because the government is accountable to the entire society, both the position and the opposition. And when they hide behind this facade or the justification of polarization, they are really avoiding their responsibility to respond to legitimate questions that the public have. For example, what is Georgia's stance on the war in Ukraine? Why haven't we had high-level visits to Ukraine? What is Georgia's stance on positions in regards to sanctions on Russia? Why Georgia hasn't completed all 12 conditions in the 18 months that was allotted for Georgia to qualify? Why are we only betting on the geopolitical decision when we can be best performance as we have always been in the Eastern Partnership and the trio, etc. These are important questions that the society has, but because of this polarization, there is not much dialogue taking place.
How would you comment, how does this polarization and this what you have just now described, how does it affect the relationship between Brussels and Tbilisi? And how does it also affect the, let's say, even though the high number of the aspiration for the EU membership of Georgia within the society? So how does it affect the EU-Georgia relations?
So EU wants from all of its aspirant countries, including Georgia, which now has the European perspective, to be more democratic. Therefore, this extreme polarization is also problematic for the European Union, and it has put depolarization as one of the 12 priorities, and it has also put the depolarization and de-oligarchization as one of the 9 preconditions it has put forward Georgia before the council decision is made about the next enlargement package, which is considered to take place somewhere in late 2024. And there are specific aspects that EU is hoping will be overcome in Georgian politics, such as more power sharing in the parliament, better and streamlined checks and balances in the government, more accountability towards the people, etc. And all of that is not possible in the extreme polarized environment that is in Georgia, but is also promoted. It is not a natural occurrence. It is promoted by specific actors, and they really need to stop doing that, and they need to engage with the opposition, with the CSOs, to work on common issues of importance for Georgia, and the #1 priority in that respect is EU integration.
will the EU candidacy status or the candidate status of Georgia, potential candidate status of Georgia, will it secure this depolarization and this process of democratization of Georgia, or will it even further divide Georgia? For instance, why am I asking this? There are upcoming parliamentary elections in Georgia. What are the outlooks of this parliamentary election, and how will it also affect the tools that the EU has when it comes to promoting depolarization and EU integration within Georgia?
In my understanding, majority of Georgian population, whether they support Georgian Dream or whether they support opposition, they all want EU integration, they all want European future. Therefore, it is my hope and a rational outcome that EU's conditionality about depolarization does not contribute to further widening of the gap in the society, but on the contrary, promote and facilitate connections between political parties. It is part of a normal political culture for various parties in the opposition, outside of the parliament, parliamentary majority, to engage and to discuss issues through dialogue.
Mm-hmm. And maybe last but not least, also to end the interview, because I don't want to take your time, let me ask you about Russia. So there has been this obvious turn of the government towards Russia. Not in a high, let's say, big way or a public way, because of the obvious reasons that it cannot promote Russian-Georgian positive relations because of the history. But still, what does this mean? Because there were also opinions that maybe this upcoming election, will be the last chance for Georgia to position itself between, will we try to democratize, or will we fall under this kind of state system which is run by the Russian government and by the Russian elites? So
this is a paradoxical development, as Georgian population throughout years has consistently supported Georgia's Western outlook and supported Georgia's integration in European institutions, including EU and NATO. So this is paradoxical and doesn't seem to respond to the needs and opinions of the wider public, as these are very high numbers. Around 74% support NATO integration, 86% support EU integration. Therefore, it's paradoxical and not very responsive to public's needs. The government explains its stance by portraying the dilemma for peace as if the government does not take this neutral stance, which sometimes really borders pro-Russian stance, there will be another war at the so-called second front, and that there is some kind of a global war party that is trying to drag Georgia into war. And this is really a false dilemma, because it was not Ukraine that invited a Russian aggression. It was a Russian decision to go into the sovereign territory of another country without a real reason having to do so. For example, the reasons it has named, the genocide or violation rights of minorities, has never been proven to be true in case of Ukraine. And if it wants to violate another country's rights, unfortunately it has proven to be capable of doing this without any substantial conditions. Therefore, the true security needs of Georgia is to be within the folds of European institutions and security structures. And everything that hampers this possibility is the real threat to Georgian national security. And I think the Georgian public understands this well, but of course the propaganda and disinformation manages to obscure some public opinion, and people, because they are also very traumatized historically with the effects of war, they are at least paying some heed to the government's portrayal of this war and peace situation.
Thank you very much for this very interesting interview.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.